The millionaire fired the housekeeper accused of theft, but her words brought him to his knees. Dust motes danced in the early morning sunlight as Lily's trembling hands straightened the crisp uniform she had worn countless times before. But today was different. Today the weight of a diamond necklace worth more than her yearly salary hung heavy in her apron pocket. In just a few moments her world would shatter, secrets long buried would claw their way to the surface, and the line between servant and heir would blur beyond recognition. Little did Lily know, as she ascended the grand staircase of the Parker mansion one last time, that her quest for identity would unravel a legacy built on lies, love, and long-lost dreams. Welcome to a world where every polish of silver hides a reflection of truth, and where the key to the future lies buried in the shadows of the past. The sun had barely peeked over the horizon when Lily's alarm clock shattered the silence of her small, cramped apartment. She groaned, her hand fumbling in the semi-darkness to silence the incessant beeping. For a moment she lay there, eyes closed, savoring the last vestiges of sleep before the weight of her reality came crashing down upon her. With a heavy sigh, Lily forced herself out of bed, her bare feet hitting the cold, worn floorboards. The apartment was quiet, save for the soft wheezing coming from her mother's room. Claire's illness had worsened over the past few months, and the sound of her labored breathing was a constant reminder of the precarious situation they found themselves in. Lily moved quietly through the apartment, not wanting to wake her mother. She knew Claire needed all the rest she could get. As she prepared for her day, Lily's mind wandered to the mountain of bills piling up on the kitchen table. Medical expenses, rent, utilities, it seemed like every day brought a new financial burden. As she sipped her coffee, the one luxury she allowed herself, Lily's gaze fell on a faded photograph ducked into the corner of the mirror. It was a picture of her mother, years younger, her face radiant with happiness. Lily often wondered about the woman in that photo, so different from the frail, sickly person her mother had become. What dreams had she harbored? What life had she imagined for herself and her daughter? With a shake of her head, Lily pushed those thoughts aside. There was no time for daydreaming or what-ifs. She had a job to do, a mother to care for, and bills to pay. Drawing a deep breath, she steeled herself for another day of invisibility at the Parker mansion. The commute to work was a stark reminder of the divide between Lily's world and that of her employers. As the bus wound its way through the city, the neighborhoods grew progressively more affluent. By the time Lily stepped off at her stop, she was surrounded by manicured lawns, luxury cars, and houses that seemed more like palaces than homes. The Parker mansion stood at the end of a long, winding driveway, its imposing facade a testament to wealth and power. Lily paused for a moment at the gates, taking in the grandeur before her. It never failed to make her feel small, insignificant. With a deep breath, she squared her shoulders and made her way up the drive. As she entered through the service entrance, Lily slipped into the role she had perfected over the years. She became invisible, a ghost moving through the grand halls and opulent rooms. The other staff nodded to her in passing, their faces a mirror of her own resigned expression. They were all part of the same world, seen but unseen, present but overlooked. Lily began her day as she always did, methodically working her way through the mansion. She dusted priceless artifacts, polished silverware worth more than her yearly salary, and tidied rooms larger than her entire apartment. All the while, she remained hyper-aware of her surroundings, careful not to disturb the delicate balance of the Parker household. As she worked, Lily couldn't help but wonder about the lives of those who inhabited this world of luxury. What was it like to wake up each morning without the weight of financial worry? To know that a medical emergency wouldn't mean financial ruin? These thoughts, dangerous and bitter, threatened to overwhelm her at times. But Lily pushed them down, focusing instead on the task at hand. She couldn't afford to let her mind wander, not when so much depended on her maintaining this job. Little did Lily know that this day, which had started like any other, would be the beginning of a journey that would shake the very foundations of her world. As she moved through the mansion, invisible as always, fate was already setting in motion a series of events that would forever change her life and the lives of those around her. The Parker mansion was a world unto itself, a microcosm of wealth and privilege that Lily navigated with the practiced ease of someone long accustomed to being unseen. As she moved through the grand halls, her footsteps muffled by plush carpets worth more than her yearly salary, Lily couldn't help but feel the stark contrast between this world and her own. Richard Parker, the patriarch of the family, was a man of contradictions. Outwardly, he exuded the confidence and authority of a self-made millionaire. His tailored suits and commanding presence spoke of a man accustomed to power. Yet, there were moments when Lily caught glimpses of something else beneath the surface, a flicker of sadness in his eyes, a momentary hesitation in his stride. These brief instances humanized him in a way that both intrigued and unsettled her. Lily's interactions with Richard were limited but notable. Unlike his wife, who barely acknowledged the staff's existence, Richard often offered Lily a nod or a brief good morning as he passed. These small gestures, insignificant as they might seem, stood out in sharp relief against the backdrop of invisibility that characterized Lily's life at the mansion. There were times when Lily caught Richard watching her, his gaze thoughtful and somewhat perplexed, as if he were trying to solve a puzzle. In these moments, Lily felt a strange connection, an inexplicable pull that she couldn't quite understand. She would quickly avert her eyes, reminding herself of her place in this household. Yet the feeling lingered, a quiet undercurrent to her days at the mansion. Veronica Parker, on the other hand, was a force of nature. She moved through the house like a queen surveying her domain, her heels clicking sharply on the marble floors. Every aspect of her appearance was meticulously curated, from her perfectly coiffed hair to her designer outfits. Veronica wore her wealth like armor, using it to create a barrier between herself and those she deemed beneath her. To Veronica, the staff were little more than furniture, useful when needed, but otherwise meant to fade into the background. Her interactions with Lily were cold and impersonal, often limited to curt commands or criticisms delivered through the head of staff. Lily had learned early on to make herself scarce when Veronica was in one of her moods, which seemed to be more often than not. Despite the challenges of working for someone like Veronica, Lily found a certain stability in her role at the Parker mansion. Her pay was good, far better than what she could hope to earn elsewhere, with her limited education and experience. Every paycheck meant another month of rent covered, another round of her mother's medications purchased. It was a delicate balance, but one that Lily had managed to maintain for years. Her other staff members became a sort of surrogate family for Lily. There was Maria the cook, whose warm smile and occasional offering of leftover of praise brightened Lily's long days. Thomas, the elderly gardener, always had a kind word and sage advice to share. And even Mrs. Holloway, the stern housekeeper, showed moments of unexpected kindness, turning a blind eye when Lily needed to leave early for her mother's doctor appointments. As the days turned into weeks and weeks into months, Lily found herself settling into a routine. She learned the rhythms of the household, anticipating needs before they were voiced, becoming an integral yet invisible part of the Parker family's daily life. She knew which foods Richard preferred for breakfast, how Veronica liked her clothes arranged in the massive walk-in closet, and the exact temperature at which the living room should be maintained. Yet, even as she became more entrenched in this world of luxury, Lily never forgot the reality of her situation. Every night as she left the grandeur of the Parker mansion behind, she returned to her small apartment and the challenges that awaited her there. Her contrast was stark and often painful, a constant reminder of the vast gulf that separated her world from that of the Parkers. There were moments when the weight of it all threatened to overwhelm her, nights when she sat at her mother's bedside, listening to her labored breathing, and wondered how long they could continue like this. Days when the casual extravagance of the Parkers, a carelessly discarded designer dress, a barely touched curry meal, made her want to scream at the injustice of it all. But Lily had learned long ago that life wasn't fair, and that bitterness would get her nowhere. So she swallowed her frustrations, buried her resentments, and continued to do her job with quiet efficiency. She found small ways to make her mark, taking pride in the gleaming surfaces and perfectly arranged rooms that were the result of her hard work. As time passed, Lily began to notice subtle changes in the dynamics of the Parker household. The tension between Richard and Veronica, always present beneath the surface, seemed to be growing. Hushed arguments behind closed doors became more frequent, and the atmosphere in the house grew increasingly strained. Lily did her best to stay out of it, to remain the invisible presence she was meant to be. But she couldn't help noticing the way Richard's shoulders seemed to slump more with each passing day, or the brittle edge to Veronica's laugh during their dinner parties. Something was brewing beneath the polished surface of the Parkers' perfect life, and Lily found herself unwittingly drawn into the undercurrents. Little did she know that she was about to become the catalyst for a series of events that would shatter the carefully maintained facade of the Parker family. As Lily went about her duties, dusting priceless artifacts and polishing silver, fate was setting the stage for a revelation that would change everything. The invisible girl was about to step into the spotlight, and nothing in the Parker mansion would ever be the same again. The day that would change everything dawned like any other at the Parker mansion. Lily arrived early, as was her habit, slipping in through the service entrance and beginning usual routine. The house was quiet, the family not yet stirring, and Lily relished these peaceful moments before the day truly began. As she made her way through the grand foyer, dusting the antique side tables and straightening the fresh-cut flowers, Lily noticed something different in the air. There was a tension, a heaviness that seemed to permeate the very walls of the mansion. She brushed it off, attributing it to her own fatigue, or perhaps the changing weather. It wasn't until mid-morning that the storm broke. Lily was upstairs, methodically cleaning the guest rooms, when she heard it, Veronica's voice, shrill and angry, echoing through the halls. The sound made Lily freeze, her heart rate instantly quickening. In her years at the mansion, she had learned that Veronica's anger, something to be avoided at all costs. "Where is it?" Veronica's voice grew louder as she approached. "I want every inch of this house searched." Lily quickly finished the room she was in and stepped out into the hallway, intending to make herself scarce. But it was too late. Veronica rounded the corner, her face flushed with anger, her eyes wild. Behind her trailed Mrs. Holloway, the housekeeper, looking uncharacteristically flustered. "You!" Veronica's gaze locked onto Lily, who felt her blood run cold. "Where were you this morning?" Lily swallowed hard, her mouth suddenly dry. I was downstairs, Mrs. Parker, cleaning the foyer and living room as usual." Veronica's eyes narrowed suspiciously. "Did you go into my room?" "My dressing room?" "No, ma'am," Lily replied, her voice barely above a whisper. "I haven't been in your rooms today." And for a moment Veronica simply stared at her, as if trying to detect any hint of deception. Then, without warning, she turned on a heel and stormed off, barking orders at Miss Holloway to gather all the staff immediately. As Lily followed them downstairs, her mind raced. What had happened? What was Veronica looking for? The answer came soon enough, as the entire household staff was assembled in the grand living room, standing nervously under Veronica's scrutiny. "My diamond necklace is missing," Veronica announced, her voice cold and dangerous. "In the one Richard gave me for our anniversary. It's worth more than all of your yearly salaries combined, and I want it found." A collective gasp went through the room. Lily felt her stomach drop. She knew exactly which necklace Veronica was referring to, a stunning piece with a large central diamond surrounded by smaller stones. She had seen Veronica wear it at their last big event, had even helped her put it away afterward. The idea that it was missing was unthinkable. As Veronica continued to rant, threatening to call the police and have everyone searched, Lily's mind whirled. She knew she hadn't taken the necklace, the very thought was absurd. But she also knew that in situations like this, someone always needed to be blamed, and all too often, that someone was the most vulnerable person in the room. Her fears were confirmed when Veronica's gaze settled on her once again. "You," she said, her voice dripping with venom. "You were upstairs this morning. You had access to my rooms." Lily felt the blood drain from her face. "Mrs. Parker, I swear I didn't." Silence. Veronica snapped. "I don't want to hear your excuses. You've always been ungrateful, always looking at things that don't belong to you." "Well, now you've gone too far." All in the room fell silent, all eyes on Lily. She could feel the mixture of pity and suspicion in her colleagues' gazes. And even Mrs. Holloway, who had always been fair if stern, looked at her with doubt. It was at that moment that Richard entered the room, his brow furrowed in concern. "What's going on here?" he asked, taking in the scene before him. Veronica whirled on him. "Your anniversary gift, Richard. The diamond necklace. It's gone, and I'm certain this girl took it." She pointed an accusing finger at Lily, who felt as if she might crumble under the weight of the accusation. Richard's gaze moved from his wife to Lily, and for a moment their eyes met. Lily saw something flicker in his expression, doubt perhaps, or something deeper that she couldn't quite name. "Veronica," he said, his voice calm but firm, "let's not jump to conclusions. We don't know what happened yet." But Veronica was beyond reason. "I want her out," she hissed. "Fired, and if that necklace isn't found, I'm calling the police." Lily felt as if the floor had dropped out from beneath her. Fired, the word echoed in her mind, bringing with it visions of unpaid bills, a mother's medication running out, eviction notices. "Please," she said, her voice breaking, "I didn't take anything. I swear on my life." For a moment Richard looked torn. His gaze moved between Veronica and Lily, as if weighing something in his mind. Then, with a heavy sigh, he turned to Lily. "I think it's best if you go home for now," he said quietly. "We'll sort this out, but for now, it's for the best." Lily felt tears welling up in her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. Not here, not in front of them. With as much dignity as she could muster, she nodded stiffly and turned to leave. As she gathered her things, her hand shaking, Lily's mind was in turmoil. How had this happened? How had her life fallen apart so quickly? And what would she do now? Little did she know that this moment, painful as it was about to set in motion a chain of events that would uncover long-buried secrets and change the course of her life forever. As she left the Parker mansion, her world in shambles, Lily was unknowingly stepping into a storm that had been brewing for years. Lily stumbled out of the Parker mansion, her mind reeling from the events that had just transpired. The accusations, the looks of suspicion and pity from her colleagues, and the crushing weight of unemployment all threatened to overwhelm her. As she made her way down the long driveway, each step felt heavier than the last. She had almost reached the gate when she heard footsteps behind her. Turning, she saw Richard Parker jogging to catch up with her. His face was a mask of concern and something else, guilt perhaps. "Lily, wait," he called out, slightly out of breath as he reached her. I need to talk to you." Lily hesitated, her instincts telling her to run, to get as far away from this place and these people as possible. But something in Richard's tone made her pause. "Mr. Parker, I swear I didn't take that necklace. I would never." Richard held up a hand, cutting her off. "I know, Lily. I believe you." His words, so simple yet so powerful, nearly brought Lily to her knees with relief. But confusion quickly followed. "Then why? Why did you let her fire me?" Richard ran a hand through his hair, a gesture that made him seem suddenly vulnerable, human in a way Lily had never seen before. "It's complicated, Lily. There's something I need to tell you. Something I should have told you a long time ago." Lily's heart began to race. What could Richard Parker, millionaire and master of this domain, possibly have to tell her that was so important? "Perhaps we should sit down," Richard suggested, gesturing to a nearby stone bench nestled among the manicured gardens. As they sat, an uncomfortable silence fell between them. Richard seemed to be struggling with his words, opening his mouth several times only to close it again. Finally, he took a deep breath and turned to face Lily fully. "Lily, what do you know about your father?" The question caught her off guard. Of all the things she had expected him to say, this wasn't even on the list. "So my father? I don't know anything about him. My mother never talked about him. I always assumed he left before I was born." Richard nodded, his expression pained. "Your mother's name is Claire, isn't it?" Lily's eyes widened in surprise. "Yes, but how did you?" "Because I knew her, Lily. I knew her very well, a long time ago." The implications of his words began to dawn on Lily, and she felt as if the world was tilting on its axis. "What are you saying, Mr. Parker?" Richard's eyes met hers, and in that moment, Lily saw a lifetime of regret and longing reflected in them. "And I'm saying, Lily, that I'm your father." The words hung in the air between them, heavy with the weight of years of secrets and unspoken truths. Lily felt as if she couldn't breathe, her mind struggling to process this revelation. "No," she whispered, shaking her head in denial. "No, that's not possible. You're Richard Parker. You're my employer. You can't be." But even as she protested, pieces began to fall into place in her mind. The way Richard had always treated her differently from the other staff, the strange connection she had felt with him, the look in his eyes when he gazed at her sometimes, as if he was seeing someone else. "I'm so sorry, Lily," Richard said, his voice thick with emotion. "I didn't know. Your mother and we were young, and when her family found out about us, they sent her away. I tried to find her, but he trailed off, lost in memories." Lily's mind was reeling. "But why? Why didn't my mother ever tell me? Why didn't you say anything when I started working here?" Richard sighed heavily. "I didn't know you were my daughter when you started working here. It wasn't until I saw you, saw how much you looked like Claire, that I began to suspect. But I wasn't sure, and I was a coward, Lily. I was afraid to confront the truth." Anger began to bubble up inside Lily, replacing the shock. "So you just let me work here, cleaning you clear floors and polishing your silver, knowing I might be your daughter. You let your wife treat me like dirt?" Richard flinched at her words. "I know I have no excuse. I should have done things differently. But Lily, you have to understand, my life is complicated. Veronica, the business, the social circles we move in, it's not as simple as just." "And as just what?" Lily interrupted, her voice rising. "As just acknowledging your own child, and as doing the right thing." Richard fell silent, unable to meet her gaze. Lily stood up abruptly, needing to put some distance between them. Her mind was chaos, emotions warring within her. Anger, confusion, a lifetime of questions suddenly answered, and 1,000 more taking their place. I can't deal with this right now," she said, her voice shaking. "I need to go, and I need to think." As she turned to leave, Richard called out to her one last time. "Lily, please. I know I have no right to ask anything of you, but please, don't tell anyone about this yet. Not even your mother. Let me try to make this right." Lily paused, not turning back. "Make it right? How exactly do you plan to do that, Mr. Parker? How do you make up for a lifetime of absence?" Without waiting for an answer, she walked away, leaving Richard sitting alone on the bench, the weight of his revelations and regrets pressing down on him. As Lily made her way home, her mind was a whirlwind of thoughts and emotions. The father she had never known, the man she had worked for and respected from afar, were one and the same. It seemed impossible, like something out of a soap opera or a bad movie. And yet deep down, she knew it was true. She thought about her mother, about the sadness that had always lingered in Claire's eyes when Lily asked about her father. How many times had she seen her mother gazing at old photographs, lost in memories she refused to share? It all made sense now in a painful, heartbreaking way. But as the initial shock began to wear off, new questions arose. Why had Richard chosen to reveal this now? Was it genuinely out of a desire to do the right thing, or was there something else at play? And what would this mean for her future? For her mother's future? As she arrived at her apartment building, Lily paused, looking up at the worn facade. This building, with its peeling paint and unreliable elevator, was a world away from the Parker mansion, and yet it was home. It was real in a way that the glittering world of the Parkers had never been. Taking a deep breath, Lily made her way inside. She knew she couldn't tell her mother about this, not yet. Not until she had figured out what it all meant, what she wanted to do with this life-altering information. As she opened the door to her apartment, she was greeted by the familiar sight of her mother, sitting in her favorite chair, a book open on her lap. Claire looked up as Lily entered, her face lighting up with a smile that quickly faded as she took in her daughter's expression. "Lily, what's wrong? You're home early." Only for a moment Lily considered telling her everything. The words were on the tip of her tongue, about the necklace, about being fired, about Richard's revelation. But looking at her mother's concerned face, she couldn't bring herself to shatter her world just yet. "It's nothing, Mom," she said, forcing a smile. "Just a long day at work. How are you feeling?" As she listened to her mother talk about her day, about the book she was reading, Lily's mind continued to race. She knew that this secret wouldn't stay hidden for long. Sooner or later, the truth would come out, and when it did, it would change everything. What she didn't know was that back at the Parker mansion, events were already in motion that would force her hand. As Richard grappled with the consequences of his revelation, and Veronica's suspicions grew, the carefully constructed world of the Parkers was about to come crashing down, and Lily, the daughter Richard had never known, would be at the center of the storm. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the Parker mansion, Richard sat alone in his study, a glass of scotch untouched before him. His mind was a tempest of memories and regrets, all centered around a young woman he had loved and lost so many years ago, Claire. He closed his eyes, allowing himself to be transported back to a time when he was just Richard, not the powerful and wealthy away Mr. Parker. A time when the world seemed full of possibilities and love was all that mattered. It had been the summer of 1990, and Richard was a young man fresh out of college, eager to make his mark on the world. He had taken a job at a local country club, working as a golf instructor to save money for business school. That's where he first saw Claire. She was there with her family, a vision in a simple white sundress, her laughter carrying across the manicured lawns. Richard was instantly smitten. It took him weeks to work up the courage to speak to her, but when he finally did, it was as if the universe had aligned just for them. Claire was everything Richard had never known he wanted. She was kind, witty, and possessed a quiet strength that both awed and inspired him. Unlike the society girls he had grown up around, Claire was genuine, uninterested in status or wealth. She saw Richard for who he was, not for what he could become. Their romance blossomed quickly, stolen moments between his lessons and her family obligations. They would meet in secret, sharing dreams and planning a future together. Richard had never been happier, never felt more alive. But their idyllic summer was not to last. Claire's family, old money with deep roots in the community, did not approve of their daughter's relationship with a mere golf instructor. They saw Richard as a fortune hunter, a young man looking to elevate his status through their daughter. The confrontation, when it came, was brutal. Claire's father, a stern man with cold eyes, had cornered Richard one evening after the club had closed. "You will end this ridiculous affair immediately," he had said, his voice leaving no room for argument. "Claire has a bright future ahead of her, and I won't let some nobody ruin it." Richard had tried to protest, to explain that his love for Claire was genuine, that he had plans, ambitions. But Claire's father had merely laughed, a cold, cruel sound that still echoed in Richard's memories. "Ambitions? Let me tell you something about ambition, boy. It takes more than dreams to succeed in this world. It takes connections, influence, things you will never have. End it now, or I'll make sure you never work in this town again." Torn between his love for Claire and the harsh reality of their situation, Richard had made a decision that would haunt him for years to come. He had agreed to end things with Claire, believing that it was for the best, that she deserved better than what he could offer her at the time. The memory of their last meeting still brought a lump to Richard's throat. Claire had been devastated, unable to understand why Richard was pushing her away. He had fed her lies about not being ready for commitment, about needing to focus on his career, and each word had been a dagger to his own heart, but he believed he was doing the right thing. "You'll thank me one day," he had told her, his voice barely above a whisper. "You deserve so much more than I can give you right now." Claire had looked at him then, her eyes filled with a mixture of pain and disbelief. "I don't want more," she had said. "I just want you." But Richard had steeled himself, turning away from her tears, from the future they had planned together. That he had walked away, telling himself this was for the best, that one day he would become the man worthy of her love. In the years that followed, Richard had thrown himself into his work with a fervour born of heartbreak and determination. He had clawed his way up the corporate ladder, made smart investments, and built the empire he now commanded. But the cost had been high. That he had married Veronica, a woman from the right social circles, who understood the game of power and wealth. It wasn't love, not the kind he had shared with Claire, but it was a partnership that had served them both well. Or so he had thought. And now, sitting in his study, the taste of success bitter in his mouth, Richard realized the true cost of his choices. He had gained the world but lost his soul in the process. And somewhere along the way, he had lost Claire and the daughter he never knew he had. The realization that Lily, the quiet, hard-working young woman who had been under his roof for years, was his daughter, hit him like a physical blow. How many times had he looked at her and felt a strange connection, a sense of familiarity he couldn't explain? How blind had he been not to see the truth that was right in front of him? Richard stood up abruptly, pacing the room as the weight of his past decisions pressed down on him. He thought of Claire, wondering what her life had been like all these years. Had she struggled? Had she hated him for abandoning her? And Lily, his daughter, how much had she missed out on because of his cowardice? A soft knock on the door interrupted his troubled thoughts. "Mr. Parker." It was Mrs. Holloway, the housekeeper. "Miss Parker is asking for you. She's quite insistent." Richard sighed, running a hand through his hair. Veronica, in the chaos of his revelations to Lily, he had almost forgotten about the situation with the missing necklace. Yet he knew his wife well enough to know that she wouldn't let this go easily. "Tell her I'll be there in a moment," he replied, his voice weary. As Mrs. Holloway's footsteps faded away, Richard took a deep breath, trying to center himself. He had made so many mistakes, hurt so many people. But now, faced with the truth of his past, he knew he had a choice to make. He could continue down the path he had been on, prioritizing wealth and status above all else. Or he could try to make amends, to be the man he should have been all those years ago, a man worthy of Claire's love, a father Lily could be proud of. The choice, he realized, was clear. It wouldn't be easy, and he knew that the road ahead would be fraught with challenges. Veronica would not take kindly to these revelations, and the carefully constructed world he had built might very well come crashing down around him. But as he thought of Lily, of the daughter he had just discovered, Richard felt a resolve he hadn't experienced in years. He would make this right, no matter the cost. He owed it to Claire, to Lily, and to the young man he had once been, the man who had believed in love above all else. With a newfound determination, Richard straightened his shoulders and headed out of the study. He had a confrontation with Veronica to face, and beyond that, a lifetime of mistakes to try and rectify. But for the first time in years, he felt a glimmer of hope. As he walked through the halls of his mansion, Richard made a silent promise to Claire and Lily. He would be better. He would make amends, and somehow, some way, he would find a way to bring his family together. Little did Richard know that the path ahead would be even more challenging than he imagined. The secrets of the past were about to collide with the realities of the present, and the storm that was brewing would test him in ways he never thought possible. Richard took a deep breath as he approached the master bedroom, steeling himself for the confrontation that lay ahead. He knew Veronica well enough to anticipate her reaction. It wouldn't be pretty. As he pushed open the door, he found his wife pacing the room like a caged tiger, her face a mask of barely contained fury. "Where have you been?" Veronica snapped as soon as she saw him. "Do you have any idea what's going on? That little thief." "Enough, Veronica," Richard cut her off, his voice firm. "We need to talk." Veronica's eyes narrowed, sensing the shift in her husband's demeanor. "What's there to talk about?" "That girl stole my necklace, and I want her arrested." Richard sighed, moving further into the room and closing the door behind him. "Lily didn't steal anything, and I think you know that." For a moment Veronica looked like Lociotin Polak. Then her expression hardened, What are you talking about? You, of course she did. Who else would have taken it? No one took it, Richard said, his gaze steady, because it was never missing, was it, Veronica? The room fell silent, the tension palpable. Veronica's face went through a range of emotions, shock, anger, and finally a calculating coldness that Richard knew all too well. I don't know what you're implying, Richard, but... Stop, Richard interrupted, his patience wearing thin. Just stop. I know what you did. You hid the necklace yourself, didn't you? To frame Lily to get rid of her. Veronica's facade cracked for just a moment, a flicker of guilt crossing her features before she regained her composure. That's ridiculous. Why would I do such a thing? Because you saw her as a threat, Richard replied, the pieces falling into place as he spoke. So you've always been threatened by her, haven't you? The way she carries herself, her quiet dignity. You couldn't stand having her around. Veronica's laugh was bitter and sharp. A threat. That little nobody, please Richard, don't be absurd. But Richard could see the truth in her eyes, the fear and insecurity that she had always tried so hard to hide. It's more than that, isn't it? He pressed. You suspected something. About Lily, about me. The colour drained from Veronica's face. What are you talking about? Richard took a deep breath. This was it, the moment of truth. Lily is my daughter, Veronica. My daughter with Claire. The words hung in the air between them, heavy with implications. Veronica staggered back as if she'd been physically struck, gripping the edge of the dresser for support. No, she whispered, shaking her head in denial. No, that's not possible. You're lying. I'm not, Richard said quietly. I didn't know until recently, but it's true, and I think, deep down, you suspected it. So that's why you wanted her gone so badly. Veronica's composure crumbled entirely. How could you? She hissed, her voice trembling with rage and hurt. All these years you've been harboring this secret, this girl? I told you I didn't know, Richard repeated. But now that I do, things have to change. I can't ignore this, Veronica. She's my daughter. Your daughter? Veronica spat the words like they were poison. What about our family, Richard? What about everything we've built together? Richard felt a pang of guilt, but he stood his ground. Our family. Veronica, we both know our marriage has been more of a business arrangement than a true partnership for years. We've been living separate lives under the same roof. Veronica's eyes flashed dangerously. So that's it. You're going to throw away everything for some girl you barely know. For a fling from your past. Claire wasn't just a fling, Richard said softly, surprising himself with the emotion in his voice. She was everything. And Lily deserves to know the truth. She deserves a father. For a long moment, Veronica said nothing, her chest heaving with barely contained emotion. Then, slowly, a cold smile spread across her face. Fine, she said, her voice eerily calm. If that's how you want to play this, Richard, then game on. But don't think for a second that I'm going to make this easy for you. She strode across the room to the large walk-in closet, rummaging around for a moment before emerging with the diamond necklace in her hand. Here, she said, tossing it onto the bed, your precious necklace. Consider it a parting gift. Richard watched her, a mixture of sadness and resignation washing over him. Veronica, it doesn't have to be like this. We can. Save it, she snapped, already pulling out a suitcase. I'm down, Richard. You want to play happy families with your long-lost daughter. Go right ahead, but don't expect me to stick around and watch. As Veronica began throwing clothes into the suitcase, Richard felt a strange sense of relief mixed with apprehension. He knew this was only the beginning of what would likely be a messy, painful process. But he also knew with a certainty he hadn't felt in years that it was the right thing to do. I'll have my lawyer contact yours, Veronica said, her voice cold and businesslike. I don't think for a second that I'm walking away empty-handed, Richard. I've put up with far too much over the years to settle for anything less than what I deserve. Richard nodded, knowing better than to argue. I understand. And Veronica, I am sorry. For everything. She paused in her packing, looking at him with a mixture of anger and something that might have been regret. Save your apologies, Richard. They're worth about as much as your vows were. With that, she zipped up her suitcase and brushed past him, leaving Richard alone in the room that had been theirs for so many years. As the sound of her heels clicking on the marble floors faded away, Richard sank onto the edge of the bed, his head in his hands. He had done it. He had confronted Veronica, revealed the truth about Lily, and set in motion a chain of events that would undoubtedly turn his life upside down. But as he sat there, surrounded by the trappings of the life he had built, Richard felt something he hadn't experienced in years: hope. The road ahead would be difficult, he knew. There would be legal battles, public scrutiny, and the monumental task of building a relationship with the daughter he had only just discovered. But for the first time in decades, Richard felt like he was finally doing the right thing. With a deep breath, he stood up, ready to face whatever came next. It was time to make things right with Lily, with Claire, and with himself. The news of Richard's revelation spread through the Parker family like wildfire. Within days of Veronica's dramatic departure, Richard found himself facing not just the legal implications of his impending divorce, but also the shocked and angry reactions of his extended family. The first to arrive at the mansion was Richard's younger brother Thomas Parker. Unlike Richard, who had built his fortune through hard work and shrewd business decisions, Thomas had always been content to live off the family name and his brother's success. He burst into Richard's study without knocking, his face flushed with anger. "What the hell is going on, Richard?" Thomas demanded, slamming his hands down on the desk. "I just got off the phone with Veronica. She's saying you've lost your mind, that you're throwing away everything for some maid." Richard sighed, rubbing his temples. He had been expecting this, but it didn't make it any easier. "She's not just some maid, Thomas. She's my daughter." Thomas stared at him in disbelief. "Your daughter? Have you completely lost it? You don't have a daughter?" "I do," Richard said firmly. "Her name is Lily. Her mother is Claire, a woman I knew before I met Veronica. I only recently found out about her." For a moment, Thomas was speechless. Then he let out a bitter laugh. "Oh, this is rich. So what? You're just going to upend everything for this girl? What about the family, Richard? What about our reputation?" Richard felt a surge of anger at his brother's words. "Our reputation? Is that all you care about? This is my daughter we're talking about, Thomas. My flesh and blood. And what about the rest of us?" Thomas shot back. "Have you thought about how this will affect the family business? Our social standing? You're not just Richard Parker anymore, you're the head of the Parker family. You have responsibilities." Richard stood up, his patience wearing thin. "My responsibility is to do the right thing. I've missed out on Lily's entire life. I won't miss any more." Thomas shook his head, a look of disgust on his face. "You're making a mistake, Richard, a big one. And it's not just you who'll pay for it." As Thomas stormed out, Richard sank back into his chair, feeling the weight of his decisions pressing down on him. He knew this was just the beginning of the family's reactions. Sure enough, over the next few days, Richard's phone was ringing off the hook. Aunts, uncles, cousins, everyone had an opinion, and few of them were supportive. The family patriarch, Richard's father, William Parker, demanded a family meeting to sort out this mess. The meeting was set for the following weekend at the family's country estate. As Richard drove up the long, winding driveway, he couldn't help but feel a sense of dread. He had spent years trying to live up to his family's expectations, to be the perfect son and heir. Now he was about to shatter that image entirely. The great hall of the Parker estate was filled with tense silence as Richard walked in. His father sat at the head of the long table, his face a mask of disappointment. Around him sat various family members, their expressions ranging from curiosity to outright hostility. "Sit down, Richard," William Parker said, his voice cold. "I think you have some explaining to do." Richard took his seat, feeling like he was facing a firing squad rather than his own family. He took a deep breath and began to speak, telling them about Claire, about Lily, about the years of not knowing and the recent discovery. As he spoke, he could see their disbelief on their faces. When he finished, the room erupted into chaos. Voices overlapped as everyone tried to speak at once. "This is preposterous. What were you thinking? Do you have any idea what this will do to us?" William Parker raised a hand, silencing the room. He fixed Richard with a steely gaze. "Let me get this straight," he said, his voice dangerously quiet. "You're telling us that you have an illegitimate daughter and you intend to acknowledge her publicly, to make her a part of this family?" Richard met his father's gaze unflinchingly. "Yes, that's exactly what I'm saying." The room exploded again, but William silenced them once more. "And what about the inheritance?" he asked. "Do you intend to make her an heir to the Parker fortune?" Richard hadn't thought that far ahead, but he knew his answer immediately. "Yes," he said firmly. "Lily is my daughter. She has every right to a share in the family wealth." This declaration was met with outrage. Richard's cousins, who had always assumed they would inherit a portion of the vast Parker fortune, were particularly vocal in their protests. "You can't do this," shouted James, Richard's oldest cousin. "She's not a real Parker. She wasn't raised as one of us." "That's not her fault," Richard countered. "It's mine. And I intend to make it right." As the arguments continued, Richard found himself growing increasingly frustrated. How could they be so cold, so calculating? This was about family, about doing the right thing, but to them, it was all about money and status. Finally, William Parker spoke again. "Enough," he said, his voice cutting through the noise. He turned to Richard, his expression grave. "You've put us in a difficult position, son." This revelation could have serious consequences for all of us. Richard felt a flicker of hope. Was his father beginning to understand? But William dashed those hopes with his next words. "I think it would be best if we kept this quiet. We can provide for the girl financially, set her up with a nice trust fund, but public acknowledgement, out of the question." Richard couldn't believe what he was hearing. "You want me to buy her off, to continue denying her existence?" "It's for the best, Richard," his mother chimed in, speaking for the first time. "Think of the scandal, the damage to our reputation. We have to protect the family name." Richard looked around the room at the faces of his family members, people he had known and loved all his life. But in that moment he felt like he was seeing them clearly for the first time. Their concern wasn't for Lily or for him, it was for themselves, for their wealth and status. He stood up slowly, his decision made. "No," he said, his voice quiet but firm. "I won't do that to Lily. She deserves better. She deserves to know her family, to be acknowledged. And if you can't accept that, then maybe it's not just Veronica I need to distance myself from." A collective gasp went through the room. William Parker's face turned red with anger. "You would choose this, the stranger over your own family?" Richard looked his father in the eye. "She's not a stranger. She's my daughter. And yes, if I have to choose, I choose her." With that, Richard turned and walked out of the room, ignoring the shouts and protests behind him. As he got into his car and drove away from the estate, he felt a mixture of sadness and relief. He knew he had just burned bridges that might never be rebuilt, but he also knew with absolute certainty that he had made the right choice. As he drove back towards the city, towards Lily and the uncertain future that awaited them, Richard's mind was racing. He had just upended his entire life, alienated his family, all for a daughter he barely knew. But despite the challenges ahead, he felt a sense of peace he hadn't experienced in years. He thought of Lily, of her quiet strength and dignity in the face of adversity. He thought of Claire, the woman he had loved and lost so long ago, and he knew that no matter what came next, he would face it head on. The road ahead would be difficult. There would be legal battles, public scrutiny, and the monumental task of building a relationship with Lily. But for the first time in decades, Richard felt like he was on the right path. As the city skyline came into view, Richard made a silent promise to himself, to Lily, and to Claire, that he would be the father Lily deserved, no matter the cost. He would make amends for the years lost, and he would build a new kind of family, one based on love and acceptance rather than wealth and status. The Parker family he had known was behind him now, but the family he hoped to build with Lily was just beginning. And despite everything, Richard couldn't help but feel a sense of excitement for what the future might hold. As the dust settled from Richard's dramatic break with his family, a new storm was brewing on the horizon. The Parker family's carefully constructed facade was beginning to crumble, revealing dark secrets that had been buried for decades. It began with an unexpected visit from Eleanor, Richard's elderly aunt, and the family's unofficial historian. She arrived at the mansion and announced, her frail figure belying the determination in her eyes. "Richard, my dear," she said, as he greeted her in the foyer, "we need to talk. There are things you need to know, things that have been Intrigued and somewhat apprehensive, Richard led Eleanor to his study. As they settled into the leather armchairs, Eleanor's gaze drifted to the family portrait hanging on the wall, a painting of Richard's parents on their wedding day. "It's about your parents, Richard," Eleanor began, her voice barely above what, "and Veronica. There's a connection there that goes beyond what you know." Richard leaned forward, his brow furrowed. "What do you mean, Aunt Eleanor?" The old woman took a deep breath, as if steeling herself for what she was about to reveal. "Your father, William, he wasn't always the successful businessman you knew him as. In his younger days, he was reckless, ambitious to a fault. He would do anything to get ahead, to secure the family's fortune." Richard nodded slowly, remembering his father's often repeated mantra, "A. Parker always comes out on top." "What you don't know," Eleanor continued, "is just how far he was willing to go. Your mother's family, the Montgomerys, they were old money respectable. The marriage was supposed to be a merger of sorts, joining two powerful families. But there was a problem. A problem. What kind of problem? Richard asked, a sense of dread growing in the pit of his stomach. Eleanor's eyes met his, filled with a mixture of sadness and resolve. Your mother was in love with someone else, a young man from a working-class family. They were planning to elope, to leave all of this behind. Richard felt as if the air had been sucked out of the room. He had never heard this story before, had never even suspected that his mother might have had a life, a love, before his father. "What happened?" he asked, his voice hoarse. Eleanor's face darkened. "William found out, and he made sure the young man wouldn't be a problem anymore." The implication hung heavy in the air. Richard felt his heart racing, his mind struggling to process what he was hearing. "Are you saying my father?" "There was an accident," Eleanor said softly. "The young man's car went off a cliff. It was ruled a tragedy, a case of reckless driving. But those of us who knew the truth, we always suspected William had a hand in it." Richard sat back, stunned. The father he had known, the man he had looked up to and emulated for so many years, suddenly seemed like a dangerous stranger. But Eleanor wasn't finished. "There's more, Richard's about Veronica." Richard's head snapped up. "Veronica? What does she have to do with this?" Veronica's family, the Blackwoods, they've been connected to the Parkers for generations. Not by blood, but by less savory ties. They've always done the family's dirty work, so to speak, by keeping secrets, making problems disappear. A chill ran down Richard's spine as he began to connect the dots. "Are you saying Veronica knew about this? About what my father did?" Eleanor nodded gravely. "Not just knew, Richard. Her family was involved. The Blackwoods have always been the keepers of the Parker family's darkest secrets. Your marriage to Veronica, it wasn't just a social match. It was a way to ensure those secrets stayed buried." Richard felt as if the ground was shifting beneath his feet. His entire life, his marriage, everything he thought he knew about his family, it was all built on lies and terrible secrets. "But why are you telling me this now?" he asked, his voice trembling slightly. Eleanor reached out, placing a gnarled hand on his arm. "Because of Lily, dear. When I heard about her, about what you're trying to do, I knew it was time for the truth to come out. But you're trying to break the cycle, Richard, to be better than those who came before you. But you deserve to know what you're really up against." As Eleanor's words sank in, Richard felt a mix of emotions washing over him: anger, betrayal, grief for the innocence he had lost. But beneath it all, a steely resolve began to form. "Thank you for telling me, Aunt Eleanor," he said, his voice steadier now. "I know it couldn't have been easy." Odeno smiled sadly. "It's long overdue, my dear. I only hope it's not too late to make a difference." After Eleanor left, Richard sat alone in his study for hours, grappling with the weight of what he had learned. The family he had been so desperate to please, to make proud, was built on a foundation of lies and murder. And Veronica, the woman he had spent decades of his life with, had been part of it all along. As night fell, Richard made a decision. He couldn't change the past, couldn't undo the terrible things that had been done, but he could ensure that the cycle ended with him. He would protect Lily, would build a new legacy based on truth and integrity, no matter the cost. With newfound determination, Richard reached for his phone. It was time to call Lily to tell her everything. She deserved to know the truth about the family she had unwittingly been born into. But as his finger hovered over Lily's number, another call came through. It was his lawyer, sounding uncharacteristically anxious. "Mr. Parker," the lawyer said, "I'm afraid we have a situation, Mrs. Parker, Veronica. She's filed for divorce as expected. But there's more. She's threatening to go public with some sensitive information about the family, unless her demands are met, of course." Richard felt a cold anger settling over him. So this was Veronica's play, blackmail, using the very secrets her family had been entrusted to keep. "What are her demands?" he asked, his voice tight. "Half of everything, Mr. Parker. And she wants Lily disinherited, completely cut off from any claim to the Parker fortune or name." For a moment, Richard was tempted to give in, to protect the family name as he had been taught to do all his life. But then he thought of Lily, of the innocent child she had once been, working as a maid in his own home. He thought of Claire, the woman he had loved and lost, and he knew what he had to do. "Tell Veronica," he said, his voice cold and clear, "that she can go ahead and publish whatever she wants. I'm done hiding. I'm done with the lies and the secrets. It's time for the truth to come out, all of it." There was a stunned silence on the other end of the line. "Mr. Parker, are you sure? The implications." "I'm sure," Richard interrupted. "Prepare a press conference for tomorrow. It's time the world knew the truth about the Parker family." As he hung up the phone, Richard felt a strange sense of liberation. The path ahead would be difficult, fraught with legal battles and public scrutiny. The Parker name, once synonymous with wealth and respectability, would likely be dragged through the mud. But for the first time in his life, Richard felt truly free. Free from the weight of family expectations, free from the burden of terrible secrets. He was choosing truth over reputation, love over wealth. He was choosing Lily. With a deep breath, Richard dialed Lily's number. When she answered, her voice cautious and uncertain, he felt a surge of affection. "Lily," he said, "there's a lot we need to talk about. About our family, about the past. It won't be easy, but I promise you, from now on, there will be no more secrets between us." As he began to tell Lily everything, Richard knew that this was just the beginning. The road ahead would be long and challenging, With each word, each truth revealed, he felt as if he was laying the foundation for something new, something better. The Parker legacy was about to change forever, and Richard, for all the pain and upheaval, couldn't help but feel a glimmer of hope for the future. A future with Lily, built on honesty and love, rather than secrets and lies. As the storm of revelations and family drama swirled around her, Lily found herself seeking solace in an unexpected place. Amidst the chaos of her newfound family ties and the upheaval at the Parker mansion, she had been spending more and more time with Jack, one of the groundskeepers. Jack had always been kind to Lily during her time as a maid, offering a friendly smile or a helping hand when she needed it. And now, as she navigated the tumultuous waters of her new reality, Jack became a steady presence, a reminder of the simpler life she had known before. It started innocently enough. Lily had taken to wandering the expansive gardens of the Parker estate, finding peace in the meticulously maintained flower beds and manicured lawns. It was during one of these walks that she quite literally bumped into Jack, who was pruning the rose bushes. "Oh, I'm so sorry," Lily exclaimed, steadying herself. Jack smiled, his green eyes crinkling at the corners. "No harm done, Lily. It's good to see you out and about. How are you holding up with all this excitement?" Lily sighed, grateful for his casual approach to the situation. "Honestly, I'm not sure. It's all a bit overwhelming." Jack nodded understandingly. "I can only imagine. Listen, I was just about to wait to break. Would you like to join me for a cup of tea? Sometimes it helps to talk things out with someone who is not directly involved." Lily hesitated for a moment, then nodded. "You know what? That sounds lovely." From that day on, Lily found herself seeking out Jack's company more and more. Their conversations, which started as a way for Lily to process her complicated feelings about Richard and her new family situation, soon blossomed into something deeper. Jack was easy to talk to, his down-to-earth nature a refreshing change from the high-stakes drama playing out in the main house. As the weeks passed, Lily realized that her feelings for Jack were growing beyond simple friendship. There was a warmth in his smile that made her heart skip a beat, a gentleness in his touch that sent shivers down her spine. But with this realization came a new set of complications. One afternoon, as they sat on a bench overlooking the pond, Jack reached out and took Lily's hand. "Lily," he said softly, "I hope I'm not overstepping, but I need to tell you something. These past few weeks, spending time with you, it's been the happiest I've been in a long time." Lily felt her heart racing. "Jack, You don't have to say anything," he continued. "I know your life is complicated right now, but I want you to know that I care about you, Lily, deeply." Lily looked into Jack's eyes, seeing the sincerity there. Without thinking, she leaned in and kissed him softly. For a moment, the world seemed to fade away, and all that existed was the two of them. But reality came crashing back all too soon. As they pulled apart, Lily caught sight of Richard standing at the edge of the garden, his expression unreadable. "Mr. Parker," Lily exclaimed, jumping to her feet. "Aye, we were just." Richard held up a hand, his voice carefully neutral. "It's all right, Lily. You don't owe me any explanations. I just came to let you know that dinner will be ready soon, if you'd like to join us." As Richard turned to leave, Lily felt a surge of conflicting emotions. On one hand, she was an adult, free to pursue a relationship with whomever she chose. On the other hand, she couldn't shake the feeling that she had somehow disappointed Richard, the father she was only just getting to know. Jack squeezed her hand reassuringly. "Go on," he said. "We can talk later." Lily nodded, giving him a grateful smile before hurrying after Richard. As they walked back to the house in uncomfortable silence, Lily struggled to find the right words. "Richard," she finally said, "about Jack and me." Richard sighed, stopping to face her. "Lily, you don't have to explain yourself to me. I know I'm your father, but I haven't earned the right to have a say in your personal life." Lily felt a lump forming in her throat. "I know, but I don't want you to think I'm not taking all of this seriously. The family, the inheritance, everything you're risking for me." Richard's expression softened. "Oh, Lily, is that what you're worried about? That I'll think you're not grateful?" Lily nodded, unable to meet his eyes. "Listen to me," Richard said gently, tilting her chin up to look at him. "You are my daughter. Nothing will change that. Who you choose to be with, whether it's Jack or anyone else, doesn't affect how I feel about you or your place in this family." Lily felt tears welling up in her eyes. "Really?" Richard smiled, a hint of sadness in his eyes. "Really? In fact, if Jack makes you happy, then I'm glad. You deserve some happiness in the midst of all this chaos." Lily impulsively hugged Richard, feeling a wave of relief wash over her. As they embraced, she realized that this was the first time she had hugged her father, her real father. As they pulled apart, Richard cleared his throat, clearly emotional. "Now let's go have dinner, Lily. If you want to invite Jack to join us sometime, you're more than welcome to." Lily smiled, feeling as if a weight had been lifted from her shoulders. As they walked back to the house, she felt a glimmer of hope for the future. Perhaps it was possible to build a new family, to find love and acceptance in unexpected places. But even as she reveled in this newfound sense of belonging, Lily couldn't shake the feeling that there were still storms on the horizon. The Parker family secrets ran deep, and she had a sinking feeling that she had only scratched the surface of what was to come. The day Richard had been both anticipating and dreading finally arrived. After weeks of careful communication through Lily, Claire had agreed to meet with him. The weight of their shared past and the years of separation hung heavy in the air as Richard paced nervously in his study, waiting for their arrival. When the doorbell rang, Richard felt his heart leap into his throat. He took a deep breath, straightened his tie, and made his way to the foyer. As the door opened, he saw Lily first, her face a mixture of anxiety and hope, and then, stepping into the light, was Claire. Time seemed to stand still as Richard took in the sight of her. Claire's hair was streaked with grey now, and lines of worry and hardship etched her face, but her eyes, those deep, expressive eyes that had captured his heart all those years ago, were exactly as he remembered them. "Claire," Richard breathed, his voice barely above a whisper. Claire's gaze met his, a storm of emotions swirling in their depths. "Hello, Richard," she replied, her tone carefully neutral. Lily looked between them, sensing the tension. "Maybe we should go inside," she suggested gently. Richard nodded, stepping aside to let them enter. He led them to the living room, a spacious area that suddenly felt too small for the weight of their shared history. As they sat down, an uncomfortable silence fell over the room. Richard cleared his throat, trying to find the right words. "Claire, I can't begin to tell you how sorry I am. For everything." Claire's expression remained guarded. "Sorry doesn't change the past, Richard. It doesn't erase the years of struggle, the nights I spent worrying about how I'd provide for our daughter." Richard flinched at her words, the truth of them hitting him like a physical blow. "I know," he said softly, "and I'll spend the rest of my life trying to make up for it, if you'll let me." Lily, sitting between them, reached out to take her mother's hand. "Mum, I know this is hard, but Richard, Dad, he's trying. He wants to make things right." Claire's eyes softened as she looked at her Ordate and at her. "Oh, Lily, you've always seen the best in people, but sometimes the damage done is too great to simply fix with good intentions." Ecod leaned forward, his voice earnest. "Claire, please, I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm not even asking for a second chance. I just want the opportunity to there for Lily to be the father I should have been for long." Claire was quiet for a long moment, her gaze distant. When she spoke again, her voice was tinged with a sadness that made Richard's heart ache. "Do you know what it was like, Richard? To be young and in love, thinking we had our whole lives ahead of us, and then to have it all ripped away, to be left alone and pregnant, cast out by my family." Richard felt tears pricking at his eyes. "I didn't know, Claire. If I had known about Lily, I would have." "You would have what?" Claire interrupted, a flash of anger in her eyes. "Swooped in and saved us, claimed us as your family. We both know your world would never have accepted that." The truth of her words hung heavy in the air. Richard had admit that even if he had known about Lily back then, he might not have had the courage to defy his family, to risk everything for them. Lily, who had been listening intently, spoke up. "But things are different now. Mom, Richard has turned his back on his family, on everything he knew. For me. For us." Claire's expression softened slightly as she looked at her daughter. "I know, sweetheart, and I'm grateful for what he's doing to win for you now, but it doesn't erase the past." Richard took a deep breath, gathering his courage. "You're right, Claire. Nothing can erase the past. But maybe we can build a better future, for Lily's sake, if nothing else." Claire was quiet for a long moment, her eyes searching Richard's face as if looking for something. Finally she spoke, her voice quiet but firm. "I won't pretend that everything is okay between us, Richard. That dear's too much hurt, too many years lost. But for Lily's sake, I'm willing to try and move forward." Relief washed over Richard. It wasn't forgiveness, not yet, but it was a start. "Thank you, Claire. That's more than I deserve." As the conversation continued, the tension in the room gradually eased. They talked about Lily's childhood, sharing stories and memories. Richard listened intently, his heart aching for all the moments he had missed, but grateful for the chance to hear about them now. As the evening drew to a close, Richard walked Claire and Lily to the door. Before they left, Claire turned to him, her expression serious. "Richard, I need you to understand something. I'm glad you want to be a part of Lily's life now, but she's been my whole world for over 2 decades. I won't let anything or anyone hurt her." Richard nodded solemnly. "I understand, Claire. and I promise you I'll do everything in my power to protect her and make her happy." As he watched them drive away, Richard felt a mixture of hope and trepidation. The road ahead would not be easy. There were still many hurts to heal, many bridges to rebuild. But for the first time in years, he felt like he was on the right path. Back in his study, Richard poured himself a small glass of whiskey, mulling over the events of the evening. He knew that winning Claire's trust would be a long and difficult process. But as he thought of Lily, of the daughter of Lice getting to know, he knew it was worth any effort. The Parker family legacy was changing, evolving into something new. And although the future was uncertain, Richard was determined to face it head-on, with Lily by his side and the hope of Claire's forgiveness to guide him. The morning sun had barely risen over the horizon when Richard's phone rang, jolting him from a restless sleep. The caller ID showed it was his lawyer, and a sense of foreboding washed over him as he answered. "Mr. Parker," the lawyer's voice was tense, "we have a situation. Veronica has made her move, and it's not good." Richard sat up, fully alert now. "What's happened?" "She's filed additional papers with the court. She's claiming that she's pregnant, Richard, and she's using this to challenge your attempts to include Lily in the family inheritance." The news hit Richard like a physical blow. Pregnant? It seemed impossible. They hadn't been intimate in years, their marriage having devolved into a cold, business-like arrangement long ago. And yet, Is it possible?" Richard asked, his voice barely above a whisper. The lawyer sighed heavily. "Legally, if she can prove the pregnancy and that the child is yours, it complicates things significantly. The court will prioritize the rights of a minor child over an adult one, especially given that Lily has only recently been acknowledged." Richard's mind was reeling. Could Veronica really be pregnant? Or was this just another manipulation, a last-ditch effort to maintain her grip on the Parker fortune? "What are options?" he asked, trying to keep his voice steady. "And we can demand a paternity test, of course, but that can't be done until after the birth. In the meantime, the court may freeze any major financial decisions or changes to the will. It effectively puts your plans for Lily on hold." Richard felt a surge of anger. Even now, Veronica was finding ways to hurt Lily, to deny her what was rightfully hers. "And find out everything you can," he instructed his lawyer. "I want to know if this pregnancy is real, and if it is, I want iron proof that it's mine." As he hung up the phone, Richard's mind was already racing, trying to figure out how to handle this new development. He knew he needed to tell Lily and Claire, but the thought of disappointing them, of having to explain that once again, Veronica was throwing obstacles in their path, filled him with dread. Before he could dwell on it further, there was a knock at his study door. It was Mrs. Holloway, the housekeeper, looking uncharacteristically flustered. "Mr. Parker," she said, her voice tight, "I think you should turn on the news." With a sense of growing apprehension, Richard flicked on the television. His heart sank as he saw Veronica's face filling the screen, her expression a perfect mask of hurt and betrayal. "And I stand before you today, not just as Veronica Parker, but as a woman wronged, a wife betrayed," Veronica's voice rang out, clear and emotional. "My husband, Richard Parker, has not only been unfaithful, but he has brought shame upon our family name by acknowledging an illegitimate child." Richard watched in horror as Veronica continued, spinning a tale of deceit and manipulation. She painted herself as the devoted wife, blindsided by Richard's revelation. And Lily, Veronica portrayed her as a gold digger, a conniving young woman who had seduced Richard in an attempt to claim the Parker fortune. "And now," Veronica's voice broke, her hand moving to rest on her stomach, "just as I discover that I am carrying Richard's child, he seeks to disinherit our baby in favor of this interloper." The press conference devolved into chaos as reporters shouted questions, cameras flashing. Richard turned off the TV, feeling physically ill. Veronica had taken their private matters public in the most sensational way possible, and the fallout would be immense. His phone began to ring incessantly, family members, business associates, all demanding explanations. So not the only call Richard cared about came from Lily. "Dad?" Her voice was small, hurt. "Is it true? Is Veronica really pregnant?" Richard's heart broke at the pain in her voice. "Lily, I don't know, but I promise you, no matter what, it doesn't change anything between us. You are my daughter, and I will fight for you." After reassuring Lily as best he could, Richard knew what he had to do. It was time to fight fire with fire. He couldn't let Veronica control the narrative any longer. Within hours, Richard had his own press conference scheduled. As he stood before the sea of cameras and microphones, he felt a calm determination settle over him. "Good afternoon," he began, his voice steady. I stand before you today to address the allegations made by my wife, Veronica Parker. While it pains me to air our private matters in public, I feel I have no choice but to set the record straight. Richard went on to tell the true story of his relationship with Claire years ago, of Lily's existence and his recent discovery of her. He spoke of his regret for the years lost and his determination to make things right. As for the claims of my wife's pregnancy, Richard continued, I await medical confirmation. If it proves to be true, I will of course fulfill my responsibilities as a father. But let me be clear, this does not negate my commitment to Lily, nor does it justify the hurtful and false accusations made against her. As he concluded his statement, Richard felt a weight lift from his shoulders. He had told the truth, consequences be damned. Whatever came next, he would face it head-on. In the days that followed, the media frenzy reached a fever pitch. The Parker family drama was splashed across every newspaper and gossip column. Richard's phone rang constantly with interview requests, which he steadfastly refused. Through it all, he focused on what truly mattered, rebuilding his relationship with Lily and Claire and preparing for the legal battle that lay ahead. Veronica had thrown down the gauntlet, and Richard was determined to meet the challenge, no matter the cost. As he sat in his study late one night, poring over legal documents, Richard realized that this was more than just a fight for inheritance or family legacy. It was a fight for redemption, for the chance to be the father and the man he should have been all along. And that was a battle he couldn't afford to lose. As the media storm raged on and the legal battles intensified, Lily found herself caught in a whirlwind of emotions and doubts. The life she had known, the identity she had built for herself, suddenly seemed to be crumbling around her. In the quiet moments between the chaos, a nagging question began to take root in her mind. Who was she really? One crisp autumn morning, Lily sat in the garden of the Parker mansion, her favorite spot for reflection. The roses were fading, their once vibrant petals now tinged with brown, a fitting metaphor for how she felt inside. She twisted the silver locket her mother had given her years ago, a nervous habit she had developed in recent weeks. Lily. Jack's voice broke through her reverie. He approached cautiously, concern etched on his face. Are you okay? You've been out here for hours. Lily attempted a smile, but it didn't reach her eyes. I'm fine, Jack. Just thinking. Jack sat beside her on the bench, close enough to offer comfort, but not so close as to intrude on her space. Good to talk about it. For a moment, Lily hesitated, but if there was anyone she could trust with her thoughts, it was Jack. I don't know who I am anymore, Jack. All my life, I was Lily Edwards, Claire's daughter. I knew where I came from, what my life was about. But now you're Lily Parker, Jack finished softly. Lily nodded, feeling tears prick at her eyes. But am I, really? I don't feel like a Parker. I look at Richard, at this house, at all of this wealth and privilege, and it feels like I'm playing a part in someone else's life. Jack listened intently, his hand finding hers in a gesture of support. You're still you, Lily. Your name, your circumstances, they don't define who you are at your core. Don't they? Lily asked, her voice cracking. Everything's changed, Jack. The way people look at me, the expectations placed on me. What I'm supposed to be this long-lost heiress, but I still feel like the maid who used to scrub these floors. As if on cue, a maid walked by, averting her eyes quickly when she saw Lily. It was a stark reminder of how much had changed. The staff who had once been Lily's colleagues now treated her with a mixture of awe and uncertainty. And then there's Veronica's pregnancy announcement, Lily continued, the words tumbling out now. What if it's true? What if Richard has another child, one who's truly a Parker by blood and upbringing? Where does that leave me? Jack squeezed her hand gently. It leaves you exactly where you are, as Richard's daughter. Lily, blood isn't everything. Family is about love, about choice. Richard chose you. Lily appreciated Jack's words, but the doubt still gnawed at her. But what if he regrets that choice? What if, once the novelty wears off, he realizes I don't fit into his world? Oh, Lily, Jack sighed, pulling her into a gentle embrace. I don't think that's possible. Anyone who spends 5 minutes with you can see how special you are. Lily allowed herself to be held, drawing comfort from Jack's steady presence. But, as she pulled away, another thought struck her. And what about us, Jack? How do we fit into all of this? You work here, and I don't even do what I am now. Jack's face grew serious. Lily, my feelings for you haven't changed. If anything, seeing how you're handling all of this with such grace has only made me admire you more. But I understand if you need space, if you need time to figure things out. Lily felt a rush of affection for Jack, grateful for his understanding. I don't want space from you, Jack. You're one of the few things that makes sense in my life right now. I need to figure out who Lily Parker is and if she's someone I want to be. Their conversation was interrupted by the sound of approaching footsteps. Richard appeared around the corner, his face lighting up when he saw Lily, then falling slightly as he noticed Jack. "Lily, there you are," Richard said, his voice warm but tinged with worry. "I've been looking for you. There are some legal matters we need to discuss." Lily felt a familiar tension settle in her shoulders. More decisions, more complications. She stood up, giving Jack's hand one last squeeze before letting go. "Of course, I'll be right there." As she followed Richard back to the house, Lily couldn't shake the feeling of being torn between two worlds. The life she had known, represented by Jack and her memories of working in this very house, and the new life being offered to her, filled with privilege but also fraught with complications. In Richard's study, surrounded by expensive artwork and antique furniture, Lily felt more out of place than ever. As Richard began to explain the latest developments in the legal battle with Veronica, Lily found her mind wandering. She thought of her mother, of the small apartment they had shared for so many years. She thought of the struggles they had faced together, the bond forged through hardship. And she thought of Richard, this man who was her father but still felt like a stranger in many ways. "Lily, are you listening?" Richard's voice broke through her thoughts. Lily blinked, focusing on Richard's concerned face. In that moment she made a decision. "Richard," she said, her voice steadier than she felt, "I need some time. Time to figure out who I am and what I want." Richard's face fell, but he nodded slowly. "I understand. What do you need?" I think I need to go away for a while, to clear my head, to figure out if Lily Parker is someone I can be." As the words left her mouth, Lily felt a weight lift from her shoulders. She didn't have all the answers, but she knew this was a step she needed to take. The road to self-discovery stretched out before her, uncertain but full of possibility. The crisp autumn air carried a hint of change as Lily stood at the entrance of the Parker mansion, a small suitcase at her feet. The decision to leave had not been an easy one, but she knew it was necessary. Richard stood beside her, his face a mask of concern and barely concealed sadness. "Are you sure about this, Lily?" he asked, his voice soft. "You don't have to go. We can figure this out together." Lily turned to face him, seeing the father she was just beginning to know. "I'm sure, Richard. I need this time to understand who I am, away from all of this." She gestured to the grand house behind them. "I promise I'll stay in touch." Richard nodded, understanding in his eyes. "Of course, just know that you always have a home here whenever you're ready. As Lily hugged Richard goodbye, she caught sight of Jack standing at a respectful distance. Her heart ached at the thought of leaving him, but she knew he understood. They had talked long into the night, and Jack had supported her decision, even if it meant being apart. With one last look at the place that had turned her life upside down, Lily climbed into the waiting taxi. Though as it pulled away, she allowed herself a moment of uncertainty. Was she making the right choice? Weeks turned into months as Lily embarked on her journey of self-discovery. She traveled, taking odd jobs here and there, meeting people from all walks of life. She volunteered at shelters, worked on farms, and even spent some time in a small artist community. Through it all, she wrote journals filled with her thoughts, her fears, and her growing understanding of herself. Back at the Parker mansion, life continued its tumultuous course. Richard, true to his word, kept Lily updated on the ongoing legal battles and family drama. Veronica's pregnancy claim had indeed been true, adding another layer of complexity to the already fraught situation. The media frenzy had eventually died down, but the Parker name had been irrevocably tarnished in the public eye. As Lily's absence stretched on, Richard found himself re-evaluating everything. The empire he had built, the wealth he had accumulated, none of it seemed to matter as much anymore. He threw himself into charitable works, using the Parker fortune to make a real difference in people's lives. It was during one of these charity events, nearly a year after Lily's departure, that Richard received the call he had been both hoping for and dreading. "Dad?" Lily's voice came through the phone, sounding stronger and more confident than he remembered. "I'm ready to come home." The reunion was a quiet affair, held in the same garden where Lily had often sought solace. As she walked up the familiar path, Lily felt a sense of peace she hadn't experienced in a long time. Richard was there to greet her, and beside him stood Claire. The sight of her parents together, tentatively rebuilding their own relationship, brought tears to Lily's eyes. "Welcome home, sweetheart," Claire said, pulling Lily into a warm embrace. As they sat down to talk, Lily could see the changes in both Richard and Claire. They looked older, warier, but there was a softness in their interaction that hadn't been there before. "So much has happened while you were gone," Richard began, his voice heavy with the weight of the past year. Lily nodded, taking a deep breath. "I know, you've kept me informed, but I want to hear it all from you in person." And so Richard and Claire began to recount the events of the past year. Veronica had indeed given birth to a baby boy, Richard's son. The DNA test had confirmed Richard's paternity, leading to a complex legal battle over inheritance and family rights. "I've set up a trust for him," Richard explained. "He'll be well provided for, but I've made it clear that this doesn't change anything regarding your place in the family, Lily." White. Lily felt a pang of emotion at the thought of her half-brother, a child caught in the middle of all this turmoil. And Veronica? Richard's face darkened. She's Veronica. The divorce was finalized 3 months ago. She got a substantial settlement, but she's been barred from any involvement in the family business. As they continued to talk, Lily shared her own experiences. She told them about the people she had met, the lessons she had learned, and the self-discovery she had undergone. "What I realized something important," Lily said, looking at both Richard and Claire. "Being a Parker, being your daughter, it's part us into who I am, but it doesn't define me entirely. I'm Lily, shaped by my experiences with you, Mom, and by the life I've lived. And now I'm ready to embrace all parts of myself." Tears glistened in Claire's eyes as she reached out to squeeze Lily's hand. Richard, too, looked moved by Lily's words. "And what about Jack?" Claire asked gently. "He's been asking about you." Lily felt a flutter in her heart at the mention of Jack's name. "I've been in touch with him. He understood why I needed to go, but well, I'm hoping it's not too late to see where things might lead." As if on cue, Jack appeared at the edge of the garden. His eyes met Lily's, and the world seemed to stop for a moment. Without a word, Lily stood and walked towards him. Their embrace spoke volumes, a year's worth of unspoken feelings conveyed in a single moment. The sound of a baby's cry broke the silence. Richard's face softened as he turned towards the house. "That's Timothy," he said, "my son. Would you like to meet him, Lily?" Lily hesitated for a moment, then nodded. "Yes, I think I would." As they walked back to the house, Lily flanked by Jack on one side and her parents on the other, she felt a sense of completion. The journey wasn't over. There would always be challenges to face, relationships to navigate, and growth to undergo. And for the first time, Lily felt ready to face whatever came next. Inside, as Lily held her baby brother in her arms, she marveled at the twists and turns her life had taken. And from a maid in this very house to a long-lost daughter, and now a big sister, each role had shaped her, taught her, and brought her to this moment. "Hello, Timothy," she whispered, smiling down at the infant. "I'm your big sister, Lily. We've got quite a story to tell you when you're older." Richard watched the scene with a mixture of joy and regret. "Lily," he said softly, "I know I've said it before, but I want you to know how sorry I am for all the years we lost, and I could go back." Lily cut him off gently. "Dad, we can't change the past, but we're here now, and that's what matters. All of us together." As the day wore on, more truths came to light. Richard revealed the full extent of the Parker family's dark history, the secrets that had been buried for generations. It was painful to hear, but Lily appreciated his honesty. "So what happens now?" she asked, looking around at her newfound family. Richard smiled, a genuine smile that reached his eyes. "Now we build something new, something better. The Parker legacy doesn't have to be about secrets and power anymore. With you here, Lily, we have a chance to redefine what this family stands for." As the sun began to set, casting a warm glow over the garden, Lily found herself filled with a sense of hope. The road ahead wouldn't be easy. There were still wounds to heal, relationships to rebuild, and a family legacy to redefine. But surrounded by the people she loved, Lily felt ready for whatever challenges lay ahead. She thought back to the day she had left, uncertain and afraid. The journey had been long and at times difficult, but it had led her back here, to a place where she finally felt she belonged. Lily Parker, daughter, sister, friend, and so much more. As she looked at the faces of her family, Richard, Claire, Jack, and little Timothy, Lily knew that she had found her true identity, not in a name or a legacy, but in the love and connections she had forged. The story of the Parker family was far from over. But with Lily at its heart, it was a story of redemption, of second chances, and of the power of love to overcome even the darkest of pasts. As night fell and stars began to twinkle in the sky, Lily made a silent promise to herself and to her family. Whatever came next, they would face it together, and in doing so they would write a new chapter in the Parker family history, one of honesty, compassion, and unconditional love. The end of one journey had become the beginning of another, and Lily Parker was ready to embrace every moment of it. In the tapestry of life, our identity is not woven from a single thread, but from the intricate patterns of our experiences, choices, and relationships. Like Lily, we may find ourselves caught between worlds, questioning who we are and where we belong. But remember, it's not the name we bear or the legacy we inherit that defines us. It's the love we choose to give, the connections we nurture, and the courage we find to face our truths. Our past may shape us, but it doesn't have to confine us. Every day we have the power to rewrite our story, to mend broken bonds, and to forge new paths. Family isn't just about blood, it's about the people who stand by us through our darkest hours and celebrate our brightest moments. Life will test us, push us to our limits, and sometimes break us. But it's in those broken places that the light gets in, illuminating parts of ourselves we never knew existed. Embrace your journey with all its twists and turns, for it is uniquely yours. Remember, it's never too late to discover who you truly are, to forgive, to love, and to begin anew. Your legacy is not set in stone. It's a living, breathing thing that you shape with every choice you make. In the end, the most beautiful stories are not those of perfection, but of resilience, growth, and the triumph of love over adversity. So stand tall, embrace your truth, and write a story that future generations will be proud to tell. This message encapsulates the themes of identity, family, forgiveness, and personal growth that are central to Lily's story, aiming to resonate with the audience's own experiences and emotions. We hope Lily's journey has touched your heart and perhaps reflected some of your own experiences. If this story resonated with you, we'd love to hear your thoughts. Simply leave a 1 in the comments to let us know you enjoyed it. And if there were parts of the story you felt differently about, we're eager to hear your perspective too. Your insights help us grow and create even better content. Lastly, if you'd like to support our team and stay updated on more compelling stories like Lily's, consider subscribing to our channel. Your support means the world to us and enables us to continue crafting narratives that explore the complexities of human relationships and personal growth. Thank you for being part of our storytelling community. Your engagement makes these stories come alive, and we're grateful for every moment you spend with us.